John Wick Chapter 3 is out, and as of this taping, it is the highest rated film in the series at 95% fresh. With the last two installments at 87 and 89% certified fresh, people are saying this makes John Wick the best action franchise in cinema history. Is this true? Well, we're going to try to find out. Hi everyone, I'm Mark Ellis. Welcome to the After Show. This is a spoiler-heavy show, so you've been warned. We have a fantastic panel here today. Joining me on the couch is Rotten Tomatoes editor Alex Vo.
Hello. We
also have live via the miracle that is Skype. She is a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic and the host of Beyond the Trailer. Grace Randolph is joining us. Grace, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you all the way on the other coast.
It's just, we live in such a great time. And also joining us on the couch, we have a very special guest, and that would be a man who has worked on countless movies. He is the stunt coordinator for John Wick 3. He's also done franchises like the Bourne movies. He worked on Spider-Man 2. He is the one, the only Mr. Scott Rogers.
Hello.
So excited to have you. Scott, before we get into talking about the actual movie, you're the stunt coordinator on John Wick 3, and I think I kind of know what a stunt coordinator does.
It's in the title.
It's a cool-looking title, and so for this particular movie, can you give us a glimpse as to what sort of things you had responsibility for on set?
I mean, you're ultimately overseeing the entire department. So, you know, the things as mundane as just getting contract information to production so guys are getting paid, to hiring the right people for the right job, to taking each sequence and breaking it down and developing the technology and the, you know, how you're going to shoot, what you're going to shoot, making sure you have the right people to do it.
It's a whole lot of hats you're wearing for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ultimately the guy at the top, but it takes a whole lot of people to make all of that happen.
Well, it's a lot of hard work that went into making this movie. I just got to shove a lot of popcorn in my face and enjoy the heck out of John Wick 3 because I clearly consider this movie fresh. It's arguably the best in the franchise. But Grace, I want to toss it to you right off the bat. Do you consider John Wick 3 to be a fresh movie?
Oh, it's the freshest tomato possible. Not a bruise on it.
It's the finest one in the bushel. How about you, Alex? Are you going fresh as well?
Oh, Parabellum is fresh. Yeah.
And Scott, I mean, I
horrible.
I imagine you think
hated it all the way. That's great.
He's too close. He's too close.
We have a bunch of freshes here in the studio, and now as we get into actually talking about this film, Keanu Reeves is the headliner of John Wick. He plays John Wick, but I think you walk out of this movie and you say the star of the movie were all of the fight scenes. So I'm going to get to all of the cool fight sequences that we got to witness. Some of them just keep going and going and going. You can't imagine that there's any more left in the tank. And just when you think it's done, there's more fight scenes. The one in particular that everyone was buzzing about when I left my theater, Scott, was the knife fights. It was so intricate in that one knife sequence that just kept on giving us more goodness. Talk about the fight scene and how that might be the best one in the series.
Well, I mean, everybody knows Chad, and Chad's, comes from the stunt world and a fight background. He was a professional fighter.
And Chad Stahelski did stunts on a previous Keanu Reeves movie with The Matrix.
Oh,
right?
yeah. He doubled Keanu Reeves for a number of years. They're good friends. So I think that knife fight is something he's had brewing for a long time. And Jonathan Eusebio, who's the fight choreographer, and his entire team that are just hands down they're the best in the business.
I mean, that clearly shows in that knife fight because, Grace, you watched that knife fight, and I don't know about you, that was my favorite fight in the entire movie.
It's up there. It's real Sophie's Choice, I have to say. I'm curious, though, like how many, if you can disclose, how many of the knives are real? Because there's this one part of the fight where Keanu is just like wailing on this guy with knife after knife, and I'm like, where are they coming from? It's almost like a magic trick.
Well, I'll tell you that all the ones that went into the body weren't real.
There's a lot of knives going into body parts.
Are your stunt people committed or not?
So if someone got stabbed, that wasn't real. Spoiler
alert. This is a spoiler one, so we can talk about that eye. My whole audience, I didn't look away from the screen for the first 30 minutes of the movie because I don't want to miss anything, except for when it went into the eye. The knife went into the eye.
Yeah, but that set the stage for the whole movie.
It really did. I mean,
you literally are like, all right, we're in for that kind of ride. Here we go.
It was like seeing the pencil trick again,
but
slower and more painful.
Yeah, which is better. You can't do the pencil trick again.
Yeah, Alex, what was your reaction to watching the knife fight?
I think the knife fight is probably up there in the John Wick series. it kind of represents the best of John Wick. It's like if you look at the fight with Common in part 2 when he's on the subway, spatially it's the same thing. It's in a hallway, it's in a subway. The audience knows where the entrance and the exits are. So you kind of put the camera anywhere in that fight and you'll orient the audience pretty much right away. So it's clear, it has long takes, it has knives, it has gunplay, and then it has that cathartic moment where John Wick just throws that axe and you're just like, yes, beautiful.
Well, you have to, I mean, you got to give Chad a lot of credit for, what we try to do, much like in a movie, which you do in an individual scene, you try to bring it up and then kind of give it a moment and then rise and create an entire arc within that sequence. And that's what, there's a little bit of levity and then there's some intensity. And so it takes you on this little 3 to 4 minute, maybe 5 minute or 10 minute, however long it is.
Yeah, there's that funny moment where they realize they're in a hallway full of knives. They're like, we can do something else with this here. That's like, the humor is really appreciated in these movies.
Yeah, go ahead, Grace.
That's where
it's not only like, I think like another thing that really makes the scene so amazing, it's not just any weapons. They're kind of like in a museum.
Yeah, it's an antique
from
store.
the very beginning with the gun that he has to like assemble, like, different parts,
Right.
and, they're in glass cases. I mean, that's really cool, that element, like these antique knives.
Yeah.
It's like you're at Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Just replace the chocolate with knives. Another one of my favorite fights, a little bit more deadly, is the motorcycle sequence, because I believe it was inspired by The Villainous, which is a South Korean action film. Grace, when you saw the motorcycle fight, can you just believe that your eyeballs are witnessing something that's such a cool fight sequence at such high speeds?
Well, it's so cool, and I think that there's a lot of showmanship that you and your team did. Like when they all draw the samurai swords at once, they're like, okay, here we go. And I think the other great thing about a number of the fights, including this one, is that, in a lot of movies, like, they wouldn't, why are they going one at a time? But here, Keanu is fighting multiple people on a motorcycle at the same time and in a believable way.
Yeah. I mean, we went to great lengths to make sure people weren't just, attackers weren't coming in because it wasn't time. We were trying to block their route with another motorcycle and, have it make sense, not just be, random for no reason.
Yeah, Grace, I love you brought up that point, because so many times, Alex, you're watching an action movie and it's like everybody's just kind of hanging around to check into the ball game. It's like, no, you're trying to get this guy. That's what I felt watching John Wick 3.
Right.
Or, you see some scenes where the lead guy's like, no, I'll take him myself. Like, it's going to be my honor. And you're like, you've got 20 guys standing there. Let's go.
And it works for the motorcycle scene, because once you knock a guy down, he's out. He's not coming back up. He's like 2 miles behind you. So, in other fight scenes, you knock a guy down, you have to think about, is he going to get back up? Did he take enough damage? But a motorcycle scene like that works really well.
The motorcycles are a great vehicle to have a fight on, but I mean, we can't forget about those lovely horses. I mean, that's, it's kind of the old school motorcycle fight. What goes into a horse fight, Scott, from your perspective on set?
That was, and the funny thing with the horses or the dogs, you can't even put the animals at risk at all. And obviously you can't put your hero at risk. So just keeping you got to start with what can we do and keeping them safe. And the horse master, Tad Griffith, and I spent a lot of time developing a spotting rig, basically, to book Keanu on. But Keanu we could keep safe, but then how do you keep the horse that is a free agent? That if the horse wants to head left at any point in time at a full gallop, you had to be able to corral that and have, keep him under control. And then, Keanu trained, 4 months with horses.
Wow.
So he legitimately could ride. But when you're riding, hanging on the side of a horse, it takes years to learn that. So we had to be able to get him comfortable enough on a horse to then put him on the side of the horse, and
you got to learn how to ride on top of the horse before you learn how to ride on the side of the horse.
Yeah.
Grace, so, okay, I'll spot you the horse fight, the motorcycle fight, the knife fight. Is one of those fights your favorite, or is there another one in John Wick 3 that you said, that's the one?
There's another. I really loved the fight with the guys from the raid.
Yayan and Chep.
Duplex.
Yeah.
And that was
with the
really
way the
cool.
knife cut the glass. That was like amazing. And how the assassins would hide, in all black in the shadows and turn around and be like, woohoo, surprise. I thought that was fantastic.
And that was a really interesting fight sequence too, because they survive it, and so we'll get into this later in the talk. But it's like, oh, they live. So what's going to happen with that? But it's just great to see. Anytime you have the Raid 2 and you have people who are in those fight sequences in a movie, it's good news, Alex.
Yeah, and like the reason why that one works too is when he leaves people alive at the end, it also informs the character like, oh wow, John Wick seems to respect people and he doesn't kill them if he respects them. And
you've seen the Raid 2.
Yeah, right. he wants the Raid 3, obviously. But like, and I remember when Force Awakens was coming out, and Yan and Chichep and Iko, they were all sort of advertised as being in Force Awakens. You're like, cool. And then you watch it, and they get eaten by like a space octopus in like 2 minutes.
It's called a Rathar, Alex.
Thank you, right. Okay. And so to see this movie, and this is like first and foremost a martial arts movie, to see these two characters just really spar with John Wick, it kind of, I think, represents like the most fun of martial arts, is seeing these two venerable actors coming together and just respectfully fighting it out.
Yeah, and fun fact about our own Alex Vo, ladies and gentlemen, is that you actually got to see a super early screening of John Wick.
Yeah.
So you got to see it still when like there were like stuntmen on wires and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. So like you mentioned the like the wire harness you developed for Keanu. So the cut I saw, you still sort of saw those wires just kind of hanging on him. In the beginning, in the fight in the library with the Boban Marjanovic,
yes,
you can still see the prop knife going into Keanu. And even during that scene, which is funny, there's no music playing during the library fight. And I was like, is the music not done, or is that the joke? It's like the quiet fight from it's like the quiet fight from the other guys. When they're just like wrestling on the ground during a funeral, like shh, quiet. But yeah.
Yeah,
I like the sound. The sound design was amazing, especially in that scene. Like you heard every bone break. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, the library fight to me, that's arguably my favorite, not just because I'm a huge NBA fan. So Boban Marjanovic is having a tough week. The 76ers lost to the Raptors on a crazy Kawhi Leonard shot. But then he also gets killed by a book.
I don't know if he's dead. His jaw might just be broken.
That's a great point. He's a big guy. He can take a beating.
Pretty diagonal.
How do you come up with a book fight?
First of all, I don't.
You just execute it.
No, again, it's the miracle, the beauty of Chad and Jonathan and John Valera and the whole team. They spend. This is what they do. They spend. They're not going to do what's been done before just because it's easy. Chad. You talked about the sound design. Chad goes to great lengths for that. He goes to great lengths. He puts his. He touches everything. He's not. He lives this. He's making a movie that he wants to see. He's a big fanboy of all the martial arts movies and all these guys, and the things that would piss him off at other movies, it's not going to happen in his movie.
Yeah, and you can tell because he brings in such all-stars to combat against John Wick, one of whom is Mark Dacascos, which was exciting to me because I see the way that he's like this cool assassin, Grace, and I'm almost wondering if in the future of John Wick artistry, can we have them be like kind of like, for lack of a better term, the Bond girls, where you have this like guest star come in and be an assassin that's cool that you can kind of vibe with that might be going against John Wick?
Well, Mark Dacascos was so amazing because not only were his action scenes fantastic, but to make him like this fanboy for John Wick, like when he sat down on the couch, he could have sat anywhere in the Continental, and he sits right next to Keanu.
Yeah.
And I mean, Mark played that perfectly. It was just. And his cheekbones, he has like these killer cheekbones, and you guys lit him so beautifully. I mean, I kind of hoped that he keeled over. I was like, maybe the blade went between his lungs and he could maybe get up later. I don't want him to go away.
Yeah, Alex, it was fun watching him be a fan of John Wick, and I think it'd be fun to have like just other assassins in this world, because we know how many contracts are currently out right now. So there could be other assassins that come in that are fans of John Wick, but also maybe we as an audience can relate to.
Right. I would pick Wesley Snipes to bring into because one, like, he already is a black belt in karate and Hapkido, I believe. And he's currently repaying his debt to society, making direct-to-DVD action movies. So
I thought you were going to say because he's not in jail anymore, which is really paying your debt to society. So he'd have to
be a jail scene.
He's got a jail scene.
He might be in the next Universal Soldier.
Yeah,
he
was
know.
great in Expendables 3.
Uma Thurman, because I felt this was like a lot from like Kill Bill. I thought this was on the same level as that. I think she'd be great.
Hey, we got knife fights. Why not have sword fights? One of the great additions to John Wick 3 in this universe was that of Halle Berry. She came in, and we got so excited as fans when we saw an image of her with the 2 German Shepherds. Then we actually see her get to work in this movie, Scott. I mean, she was such a force to be reckoned with. I think she really added a lot to John Wick 3 and to the storyline.
Yeah, I mean, I heard Chad make a quote that the best way to fake something, the best way to fake being good is just be good. So, and that's what she, I know, I think I was talking to Chad, a little bit before she was cast, and I was like, is she in for this? He goes, oh yeah, she's in. And, she trained long and hard. I think it's noted that she even broke a couple ribs. And I mean, she poured in. She wasn't, I don't know if she took it personally or what, but she knew, what Keanu did, and she wasn't going to come in and do anything less.
Well, now you watch her in this movie, and I've seen a lot of fans online talking about how they would love to somehow have like the Charlize Theron character from Atomic Blonde. I know you've worked with Charlize too. Have her and Halle Berry maybe team up.
Oh, okay.
You think she can hold her own against Charlize?
Oh, well, I mean, Charlize, the same work ethic, and same level of, their talent as actresses or without question.
Yeah, Grace, the end of this movie clearly indicates that John Wick and the franchise ain't going anywhere. So would you be up for a Halle Berry character spin-off eventually one day?
I don't want to dilute the John Wick magic. I maybe would like her to return in John Wick 4. I think that would be great. But there is a lot of talk these days about like all-female team-ups. You have the A-Force situation in Avengers Endgame. So, and then, speaking of Charlize Theron, they're thinking of doing a spin-off from the Fast and Furious with her character. So if they are going to do an all-women team-up, I think Halle Berry is definitely going to be on that list for any of these franchises.
Yeah, and Alex, I mean, Halle Berry's great in the movie, and it's so awesome that she brings the dogs along for the fun.
Right.
The dogs steal scenes in this film, and they're just so magnificent to watch.
Yeah, and it's like a great contrast, or maybe companion to what John Wick's journey, when the dogs get shot in Casablanca. Halle Berry's about to go off.
It made me nervous.
And John Wick's all like, I get it.
Yeah,
and it suggests like, these past 3 weeks for John Wick have been pretty shitty, but he's learning. He's like, maybe I shouldn't have reacted with the dogs in that way. So again, like that moment, produce another character moment for John Wick. But yeah, the dogs are perfect complement, perfect addition to the series. Yeah, especially because the movie, like John Wick 3, addressed the one thing I wanted the movie to do after John Wick 2 was that I felt like John Wick 2 had a lot of headshots, not as much combat. So in this one, John Wick is pretty much doing all hand-to-hand combat, allowing Halle Berry to come up with her dogs to do all the gunplay. I think that was a perfect choice.
Yeah, we get that with those nice like low shots where you really get to see everything play itself
out. Dogs running
around.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I liked about the dogs was that women just aren't as strong as men, and sometimes some movies will try to pretend that that they are. So I like the dogs and Halle Berry's gunplay because I think that it made it realistic that she was able to level the playing field that way by being a little smarter and coming up with like these workarounds. And so I thought that was really fantastic.
I love that Grace brings up workarounds because, Scott, we were talking just before we went to air about the dogs and how much of that was these actual actor dogs versus CGI. You showed Alex and I a clip. Grace, I'm so sorry. We got to send this to you after. He's got a clip on his phone of the dogs actually doing the wall climb, and that's not a faked thing. That's like an actual dog performing that stunt.
Yeah, I read
That's so cool.
And one of the critics that didn't give it a fresh complained about the CG dog running up the wall. And so I felt the need to show you that it's a real dog running up a real wall.
Yeah, and that's the issue with watching so many movies that are just wall-to-wall CG. You don't really believe what you're seeing anymore. But reading interviews with Chad Stahelski, he's all like, "We did shoot in the Sahara. You know, we do go to Rome. We did shoot on motorcycles on the bridge. It's all real, and we should appreciate, you know, stuff like that when we're seeing it practical in real time.
Yeah, I mean, the movie's based in reality. You know, he's not doing these. I mean, you know, even the fall at the end, you're like, it is actually survivable because.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Maybe
what we
coat.
Designed, it would knock the crap out of you. But you know, as Jackson Spidell showed us, it's survivable. He did it.
Yeah, and as we
Wow, I wasn't so sure when his head hit the fire escape. That was the one point where I was like, I don't know.
No, and it, you know, people think that's CG, and it's not. It's all real. But you know, we built it for him to be able to do it.
Yeah, might not have killed him, but you're definitely in concussion protocol for a little bit after a fall like that. Well, our next topic is going to be the world building that we got to see in John Wick 3, because so much of the mythology got expanded in this movie. I mean, you get to see the High Order, and you get to see like the administration, the adjudicators. So, Alex, I'm giving you all these kind of things that we built on from the first two John Wick movies. Which one stood out to you as far as the lore goes?
The one that stood out was when he's being chased by Mark Dacascos, and he stops and he touches the steps of the Continental. He's like, "You can't hurt me anymore." I'm like, "Is this freeze tag? This is how the rules work?" So I was actually not a huge fan of how the lore developed. You know, in the first movie, it's like tantalizing. You're like, "What is this world? Who are all these people?" In part two, you're like, "Wow, this is expanding. It's across the globe. It involves everybody." I felt in part three, it's getting just a little creaky, a little restricting. So. For as much as I really enjoyed John Wick 3, the lore stuff I felt was sort of now holding the series back a little bit.
Grace, do you agree with that point that maybe we got a little too much into the lore and the mythology and building this world out a little too big?
No, I actually liked it. I thought it finally clicked for me. You know, for the first two John Wicks, I felt he was just kind of running around, which was fine with me, but I didn't really get a sense of the world. But here, I finally started to see it all come together. For me, the tender worked the best, you know, the ticket to see Angelica Houston, the marker with Halle Berry. I know there was a marker used in the second film, but to here, it really drove it home. Even the dogs. I understood the dogs more finally, that they were, you know, the only sense of pure heart and loyalty that these assassins could have in their lives. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, and Scott, so many times in movies I feel like we try to get too deep into a character's backstory when we didn't really want to go there, and that was my nervousness when I saw that we were going to explore John Wick's past a little bit, but I actually found myself really gravitating towards it. I think it's really cool. He was trained in ballet, and we get to know what his backstory is. Just as a fan of the franchise, did that pay off for you?
Yeah, I mean, when I read it in the script, I loved it because it didn't give you so much that you're like, it left enough that you didn't understand, to where he still had all these abilities, you know, to explore, where you're like, he shouldn't be able to do that. But it showed you enough to, you're like, oh, that makes sense. You know, and it's subtle, like, you know, not everything in John Wick's obviously subtle, but it was just him walking through, and you see some people doing ballet, and you see some guys throwing each other on their head, and, you know, you're like, oh, I get it. And then you move on.
Yeah, and you know, we knew that there were other Continentals, and then seeing Morocco, seeing Casablanca, seeing that kind of thing. I like the way that they built upon that. I understand your point, Alex, where it's like, okay, we're stretching this a little thin, but I want more of these, and I like that we can now make this an international kind of thing and not just a domestic feel.
Yeah.
I want to see all the hotels.
I want to see all of them.
Every movie you go to a different hotel, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I want to see them.
Yeah, what else was cool is that we're really getting nods to not only cinema history, but Keanu Reeves' history with this movie, because there's a lot of references to the Matrix here. And I think maybe whereas with the first John Wick movie, where you didn't want to harken back to your past, you want to establish yourself as your own franchise, we had a lot of references to the Matrix. One of the more on-the-nose ones was that we actually get to see the doctor, it's Randall Duck Kim, who obviously the keymaster from the Matrix. And then we also got this really sweet underwater fight with the slow motion bullets. Scott, on set, are we talking about the Matrix? Are we saying, hey, this is kind of like when Neo had to dodge bullets?
No.
That's just me as a fan of both franchises. Grace, did you read as far into that as I did?
I didn't make the connection with the bullets underwater, but I like it a lot. I think that's really good. I I think it works because this was born out of The Matrix. I mean, that's where Chad and Keanu forged their friendship that led to this.
Yeah.
So I think it's an appropriate nod.
I think it's safe to say, that's why you see so many actors from The Matrix, because that was such a, as a professional that works in the industry, not every movie is the same, and some are easier, some are harder, some you form these friendships and these lasting relationships, and obviously you see Chad's worked on 150 movies. You don't see people from all those other movies. You're seeing, so it's a sort of a testimony to The Matrix and what those people all went through together as people outside of making a movie.
Yeah, and I think the way people keep on bringing up The Matrix, it's done out of like admiration and respect for the movie. And John Wick in no way lives in the shadow of The Matrix, but I think as viewers and audiences, we love to see that sort of flow, that connection from The Matrix all the way into John Wick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was connecting a lot of dots during the lobby fight too, because you got the green lighting.
green
and I'm like
lights.
thinking, this is kind of Matrix-y. Nevertheless, we move on to the very tantalizingly abrupt ending that we got with John Wick 3, which, as a fan of the franchise, I'm kind of excited about because it means that we're probably getting John Wick 4. So, Grace, what are some of the things that you're excited about seeing possibly in John Wick 4?
I think guest stars, as you pointed out, I think, I want to see continuing to bring, people in. I think as the movies get better, you can get even better people to come in. Like, you can get an Uma Thurman, you can get a Wesley Snipes. Also, I just want to see how they can possibly top themselves. I agree with all of you that when I was watching the movie, I was like, well, how much longer can you go on like this? And they're like, for the entire movie. And it was shocking.
Right.
Yeah, I got to ask you, Scott, I mean, does the prospect of a fourth John Wick movie, does it make you excited or does it make you exhausted?
No, it's great. I mean, especially when you're creating something that's not been done before, as a creative person, like Chad doesn't want to go just do another fight. He wants to do the knife fight. He wants to do a fight on horse, horse foo and car foo, and so the opportunity to, or even the motorcycle from Villainous, to take that and like, okay, this has been done, but we can't do that. We got to do it like this. So that's why I even do what I do ultimately.
Yeah, Alex, we thought we got a cool buzzword out of the first John Wick with gun foo, and now we get horse foo and car foo and motorcycle foo. I guess I'll tell you what I really want to see in John Wick 4 is I want to see, because there's so many foos in the world. It's going to be foo fights. It's going to be great.
The Foo Fighters next.
The Dave Grohl can do the soundtrack for the fourth one. It's going to be this whole melting pot. What I want to see is, because we mentioned John Wick has some sort of code, and he's even left some assassins that were going after him alive. So, Alex, do you think we could see a assassins assemble kind of moment where it's actually John Wick teaming up with other assassins ultimately?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the way we could talk about, like, did Ruby Rose or Ares die in John Wick Chapter 2,
Or Common with
exactly,
Cassius,
right,
yeah.
right. Did he get to the hospital or not, you know? Yeah, but, what they're going to have to start doing is introducing characters who actually live. Mark Dacascos, as awesome as he was as Zero, well, I think he dies. We actually, well, yeah, we're pretty sure he dies in this one.
I say no.
Yeah, right. Just have him come back. Yeah, just have him walk around with a sword the whole movie in Part 4, But yeah, like this, from what we've seen with Part 2 and Part 3, this series can go anywhere. It could kind of withstand any kind of thing you could throw at it. So yeah, like, bring on the Assassins Assemble. Yeah,
the actual franchise can go on anywhere. We could get John Wick 4, 5, 6, 7, and we'd probably line up to see all of them. There's also the recent announcement that there's going to be a spin-off show on Starz about the Continental. So, Alex, do you have any sort of timeline where that maybe should take place? Should that be a prequel to John Wick? What are you thinking?
I think, I have honestly almost no interest in watching a TV show about the Continental. So if I were to get me hooked on it, I would probably go like maybe a prequel, maybe the building of the Continental. I would watch maybe like a Downton Abbey or like Gosford Park style, where it's just about the people who have to work.
I like that.
Yeah, work day to day the Continental, the ones with like the bellhops and
who works there. I like
yeah,
that
exactly, right. And like, if you can make a Continental a TV show with no violence, then I'll watch it.
Yeah, Grace, did Alex just sell you on a Star subscription with his?
I was right with him. I was like, I don't want to see it. You're not going to have the budget. You're not going to have the production values. But if you can do the bellhop, like I love that in this movie, the concierge stepped out from behind his desk. Yep. I'd love to see what are the protocols? What are the trainings? What are the rules for the staff? That would be really cool.
Or even the women who are running the phone booths or the phone lines. Like the day-to-day of that.
Suicide girls.
Yeah.
That's what they're called.
Yeah, but we also want to, keep Scott gainfully employed. So I'd like to see some sort of fight scene in a Continental show.
There's enough out there.
The concierge had skills. Where did those skills come from?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we may not get a whole lot of stunt work in this Continental show, at least the version that Alex and Grace are pitching. But what has been the talk of the town recently is whether the Academy Awards could open up a category for best stunt work in a movie. It's one of the most debated topics when you think about the Oscars in the last few years. So, Scott, I want to ask you, do you think that John Wick 3 might be the movie that could finally be that watershed moment where the Academy recognizes stunts and presents the best stunts of the year with an Oscar?
Is it worthy of that? Yes, absolutely. I mean, stunts is the only on-camera craft that's not recognized by the Oscars. Will they? I don't think so.
Grace, do you share Scott's pessimism, or do you think that we are in the running to have stunt work rewarded at the Academy Awards?
Well, this year, it might be too hard to get a category approved that quickly, but you might maybe get like an honorary Oscar. That would be something nice. But I think that it's occurring to a number of people watching this that the artistry is so strong that it is worthy of that recognition. And I think that the really important distinction is that I think in the past, people have been reluctant because they think it's just the stunt. They're thinking of rewarding the stunt performer. And that's difficult because it's a shared performance with the actor. Obviously, the actors are very territorial as to who has ownership of the role. But when you think about someone like Scott, like the stunt choreographer, and you see how important that is, that's where the Oscar, I think, should go. It should go to the coordinator and the whole department.
Yeah, it's kind of a loaded question to ask you, Scott. Do you think that the coordinator should get the Oscar?
I think I'm the best.
We want to give you that trophy so very bad. Alec, do you reward the group? Do you reward the performer? How would you do it if you are in charge of the Oscars?
I think it would have to be, kind of like when you give a movie Best Picture, it goes not to the director, to producer. So I think kind of like the person who oversees the whole thing. Like, I would be into it if it was called Achievement in Popular Film. Where that was the award, that was a category that the Academy sort of introduced, and then that kind of imploded. I think that's what they were trying to kind of go like, we don't have a category for stunts, but we love the stunt work in John Wick 3. I think that's where they would probably wanted to put that. So instead of we have honorary Oscars for like Total Recall for the effects. They got one for Toy Story, So instead of like doing this individual honorary one, just like put all like the cool stuff, like maybe Black Panther had like the best stunt work as well. Put that
but
in
I think that,
popular film.
That's going to confuse VFX with stunts, Like I think last year the clear winner would have been Mission Impossible Fallout. And I think if you have a just popular category, I mean, forget the problem of saying what is the best picture, the best unpopular film. I think that Avengers Endgame is like going to be considered like the fan favorite of the big blockbuster. And I think that it wouldn't highlight the artistry of John Wick, because as you pointed out, that's all real. That's wire work. That's not VFX.
Yeah. Well, it's changed too. When effects there's been a category for effects for a long time, but if you look back 20 years ago, it was 2 mechanical effects guys and 1 VFX guy every now and again. Now it's all VFX guys and 1 mechanical effects guy, but they're all under the effects, even though visual effects and mechanical effects are pretty different.
That's a good point.
I mean, even the fact that we're having any sort of conversation about the Oscars surrounding John Wick 3 means that we really approve of this movie. And like I said at the top, it's fresh right now at 95%. The first 2 are certified fresh, 87 and 89% respectively. So I mentioned it at the top, and now I ask the ultimate question of my panelists. Grace, I'm going to start with you. Is John Wick the best action franchise in history?
I think when you put it like that, this latest installment gets it there. Just because of how it's coordinated, it's almost like a symphony. It's just so perfectly done, and it's all the action sequences are thought of on every level, from sound to visuals to lighting to the actual fights to the acting. It's beautiful. So it might be.
And the level of artistry, as Grace pointed out, you all have kept topping yourselves with these John Wicks. Scott, are you able to separate yourself from the work and say, no, I think that John Wick might be in the running for best action franchise of all time?
Oh, yeah, I mean, without question. I think what ultimately gives it that distinction is that each one steps up. It's, we know how many trilogies out there sort of fall off. By the time you get to the third one, it's sort of stale and like, all right, whatever. And John Wick obviously doesn't do that. So the fact that it steps up, the third one being the best of the three, and in my opinion, I think you agree, gives it that distinction.
Yeah, I think, Alex, I mean, I'm wrestling with the fact that we've been blessed with so many Mission Impossible movies. I still just, for nostalgic purposes and because I love the first three so much, I'm going to throw Die Hard into the mix.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a clear-cut action franchise that lifts itself above the rest?
I think John Wick is probably at the top because Mission Impossible took a moment to become an action franchise. It started as a heist spy thriller franchise. You had like Indiana Jones, but that guy kind of got sullied with the Crystal Skull. And but yeah, I mean the fact that John Wick came out of the gate this good and keeps on getting better probably puts it at the top. Maybe tying it with like the Police Story series, Police Story 1 and 2, and Super Cop. Yeah.
I'd like to add that I think a really important element is that it's made by guys with a stunt background. It was born out of the stunt, the relationship between Keanu and Chad, the stunt, you and your team, Scott, are working so actively as a part of it. And I think that's also really important.
That's a great point, Grace, and I'm glad you said it was born out of that because it reminded me of the Jason Bourne movie, so I would throw them in there as well.
Those are great too.
The debate will continue to rage on as to whether John Wick is the best action franchise in history, but we can at least say this, after John Wick 3, we're all very excited about more adventures in the John Wick universe. I am so happy to be joined by a great panel today. I want to thank Alex, Grace, and Scott for hanging out with me talking John Wick 3, and thank you guys for watching today's episode. Make sure you comment, let us know your thoughts on John Wick 3. What was your favorite fight sequence? What do you want to see out of John Wick 4? What was your favorite part of the lore, the myth building? We want to hear from you, and make sure you click that bell right there because that's going to give you an alert the next time an after show drops. Anytime a big movie comes out that Saturday, we're going to have one of these for you. For my entire panel and everybody here at Rotten Tomatoes, I'm Mark Ellis, and we'll see you real soon.